Namaste, friends. Welcome to another episode of the Essence of the Bhagavad Gita. It is my pleasure to be sharing this morning with you. In today's class, the verse that we'll be looking at is again from chapter 2, and the verse that I picked is number 19. And I'll first read the verse for you, and I'll give you the translation before speaking a little bit about it. The verse goes like this. Yayenam veti hantaram yaschainam manyate hatam ubhau tavna vijanito nayam hantina hanyate. And in the last class, we saw Arjuna seeking counsel and guidance from Krishna. Arjuna, where he tells Krishna, I am your disciple, I surrender unto you, please guide me, tell me what is right. And the rest of chapter 2 is Krishna responding to Arjuna. That's pretty much all of Gita, but specifically to that question of what is right, what should Arjuna do, and Krishna responds to some of Arjuna's specific questions. And this verse is Krishna's response to Arjuna, which is verse 19 of chapter 2, and this is the literal translation of the verse. Krishna tells Arjuna, one who considers his true self to be the slayer of anything, and one who believes that he himself in essence can be slain, does not know the truth. The true self can neither slay nor be slain. So that's what Krishna is telling Arjuna. Now, as I was looking at this verse and reading Swami Kriyananda's commentary on this section of the Bhagavad Gita in chapter 2, the first thing that came to me was how true scripture has so many layers. And this is, in fact, something very specific even to the Eastern way of thinking, or specific to how we approach things in Sanatana Dharma. Sometimes in the West, scripture can be approached theologically, where there's a lot of intellectual hair splitting on what is the right meaning of this verse or this thing that Jesus said or this particular story in the Bible. Whereas in the East, truth is always approached in its many, many facets. Like a diamond, no matter how you see it, you see something beautiful, something that is relevant for you. In that same way, this section of the Gita has so many layers and so many different teachings on all different levels. At the most superficial, or I shouldn't say superficial, at the most literal level, Krishna is counseling Arjuna, telling him that there is righteous war, that not all war is adharmic, that sometimes dharma is to fight. There is a place for war in this world, which is the situation where they find themselves in, where Arjuna is needing to face all these relatives, his cousins and his teachers, and all of these people that are so dear to him on this battlefield, and he's wondering if it's wrong for him to be fighting all these great souls. And Krishna is telling him, no, it would be against your dharma to not fight. There is a place for war, and there is a place sometimes to stand up and fight, to resist. And that really is the teaching in the literal story of the Mahabharata, where Krishna is telling Arjuna, you have to fight. Now again, in this section, there is Krishna is going one level deeper. That's the second layer that he is revealing to Arjuna, which is this teaching of reincarnation, of the cycle of birth and death, of the true nature of the soul. This, in essence, is the thread that goes through pretty much the entire chapter 2 of the Gita, and we have a lot of verses where Krishna is explaining the nature of the true self to Arjuna, where he's saying the soul that we are talking about, who you are in essence, your true self can neither slay nor be slain. It is changeless, it's beyond time. It is neither born nor does it die. That's who you are. This question of who am I? You are the soul. You are not this limited ego. Yogananda ji defined ego as the infinite self identified with the limited body and the limited mind. And he described self-realization as the knowing in body, mind, and soul that we are one with the omnipresence of God. So essentially, all of spiritual path is the resolution of that misidentification. That's really all the delusion is our confusion that we are limited, that somehow I am this body, I am this mind, I am this personality, I am all those limitations that I hold on to. And Krishna is counseling Arjuna and telling him, you are not that. What you are is your own soul. What you are is that changeless essence that is within, and that is the true nature of your own soul and your dharma in this world. And the third layer, which I find most interesting and in fact perhaps most applicable in our own lives, is what I want to spend most of the time this morning, is the allegorical nature of death. Because what Krishna is talking about is the teaching of reincarnation, birth and death. But if we were to pull even one step closer, one step subtler to the allegorical nature of the Gita itself and the symbolical nature of this war in Mahabharata, we understand that both the sides, the Pandavas and the Kauravas, are in fact mental citizens. That this whole battle is allegorical, and what's happening here is Arjuna, that will to uplift our desire to find God, being counseled by Krishna, the Guru consciousness, our own soul's intuition, to be able to destroy all these lower tendencies in our own nature. And in that sense, what Krishna is talking about is even those lower tendencies, those aspects of our natures, those energies that are invested in the world, they can neither slay nor be slain. What does that mean? Essentially, Swami Kriyananda beautifully puts it in his commentary. All that energy that we have invested in our faults, in all the shortcomings of our own nature, have to be transmuted. They cannot be repressed, nor can they be rejected. And that is an extremely important teaching. And I, in my own personal life, find that to be one of those gems that the Bhagavad Gita offers to us in the ways in which we can work with ourselves, how we can make progress on the spiritual path, this understanding that we want to accept and work with our energies. Krishna later on tells Arjuna, be thou a yogi. And the way Yogananda ji, my guru, explained it is, yoga is the science of working with what is. Who are you? What is your nature? And we start working with it. We don't reject it, nor do we suppress it, nor do we run away from it. We learn to accept it, and we learn to transmute and work with all those parts of our own nature. I was thinking of examples from my own life for this verse last night, and so many things came to me. I can perhaps spend hours talking about it. And I could even think of that in the lives of everyone around me, how all those faults or shortcomings in our own nature, as one of my wise friends, Ashanai Swami, once described it, are virtues taken too far. I meditate on that sometimes, how things that we find to be challenges or obstacles in our own nature are in fact positive in their essence. These are all flows of energy that can ultimately lift it up towards the divine, but we have taken it in the wrong direction. We have taken it a little bit too far, and they become vices. For an example, I was thinking of how in my own life, oftentimes I've found myself to be fairly emotional in nature. I can be drawn out very easily. Sometimes my responses to life situations are more intense than they need to be. Sometimes I'm caught up in the sufferings of others, that I might even shed tears. And these traits, I've found they're not all that helpful in my own spiritual journey. And when I started embracing the yogic lifestyle more consciously and following this path of self-realization, it became clear to me this energy of the heart can be directed up towards the divine. This can be fuel for my own devotion. If I were able to master this, if I was able to transmute this tendency, this would become one of my strengths. This would grow into that passionate devotion for God. This can grow into that compassion and understanding of all those around me. And that really is what we are talking about. All those things that we think of as belonging to the Kaurava side, even negative tendencies, anger, jealousy, hatred, all of that are energies that we have invested ourselves in. What we are killing is not the energy itself. We are not suppressing or rejecting that energy. what we are killing is essentially that downward pulling inclination of that energy. Duryodhana is not energy, he is that downward pulling tendency. And when Arjuna slays him, in the story of the Mahabharata, Bhima kills Duryodhana. When Bhima kills Duryodhana, he's not destroying that energy, he's transmuting it. In fact, in the story of the Battle of Kurukshetra, I find this very fascinating. All these different warriors who are pitted against each other, in a way, they're clues for how we can work with ourselves in our spiritual lives. Duryodhana, as we already know, he represents king material desire. He represents all those tendencies that pull us, all those desires that pull us into this world through our senses. And he is leading the Kaurava army. He is the one who has started this whole war. And he ultimately, on the last day of battle, he is killed by the second Pandava brother Bhima. And Bhima represents the heart chakra. He represents pranayama, the control of energies. And he represents that uplifted energy of the heart in devotion towards the divine. So that energy that draws us out through our senses, all those desires that pull us out into this world, when we are able to turn them around, when we are able to transmute them, when we are able to lift them up, they become pure devotion towards the divine. And that's true with all the Kaurava brothers who are going to fall down on the battlefield of Kurukshetra. As Krishna tells Arjuna, you're seeing these warriors fall, I am seeing them rise. And that is our spiritual journey. For one more example, Karna is essentially one of the Pandava brothers, although he is never considered so, and he himself does not think of himself as a Pandava brother. He is the first son of Kunti, even before all the other 5 Pandava brothers are born. And there is so much subtle symbolism in his character, because Karna is attachment to happiness in this world. And as Yoganandaji described, that is one of our own soul's innate qualities, to seek happiness. But Karna is also that attachment and commitment to finding that happiness on the material plane. That's why his story is so poignant. It almost works out, but it doesn't, because his loyalty is pledged to Duryodhana. His loyalty, this commitment to finding happiness in this world, attaches itself, it becomes loyal to material desires. So he always has to face defeat, and ultimately he is vanquished in that war. But that desire for happiness is a noble seed. That's why he actually does not belong on the Kaurava side. Unfortunately, it is tainted by its attachment to finding it on the material plane. And ultimately, in the war of Mahabharata, he is killed by Arjuna, that great warrior, that willpower to uplift, but more than anything, that desire for God, that desire for finding happiness in this world. When looked at in the right way, when lifted up, it becomes desire for God. In that same way, every single warrior on the Kaurava side who falls down, that energy is lifted up, that energy is liberated. That is our pathway to salvation. You know, my dear friend and one of my teachers, Shanti Rubenstone, again, some of you may have seen these teachers on YouTube or our live broadcasts. She shared a beautiful story which she has shared before, and one, again, on the same lines I found very useful in my own spiritual life. This is the story of a Buddhist monk and a Rinpoche. And in the story, the monk is always throwing away all the food scraps, all the garbage generated in the kitchen, and thinking, this is useless. This is not something I need in my life. And the Rinpoche counsels him, how will you grow any food? How will you do any gardening? Of course, your garden is not thriving. All this that you're throwing away is compost. It's valuable. Once you're able to recycle it, once you're able to add it back into the soil, that is going to be the fuel that is going to grow into these beautiful fruits and flowers and all that you can enjoy in your own life. And that, friends, is what we're really discussing here when we talk about death, as Krishna is explaining to Arjuna. This death that Krishna is talking about is allegorical. It is the death of our own lower nature. And in this story of Mahabharata, as Swami explains in detail in his commentary, it is not an accident that these two warring clans are cousins. It would be so much more easier if this kingdom and that kingdom were fighting with each other. But what makes the story of Mahabharata so complex is that these are cousins. These are brothers who grow up in the same family. They're so close to each other. And Bhishma and Drona, all these elders, care deeply for each one of them. And yet they find themselves in this battlefield fighting each other. And it's not an accident. It's not just an emotional drama. It is what life is. It is what the spiritual path is. Arjuna finds it so hard to face all these warriors on the battlefield because they are so close to him. And these tendencies are so close to us, they're so close to our hearts. It's what we have identified as ourselves. Arjuna, essentially what Arjuna is telling Krishna is, if I kill all of them, who am I? I don't have my own identity. My identity comes from all these personality traits. It comes from all my likes and dislikes. How can I kill them? How can I destroy them in war? And how can this be dharma? This is who I am. And Krishna says, no, you are the soul. You are changeless. You are God. You are in essence that divinity that has gotten confused, that is identified with this limitation. I am also moving through this body and animating this body and speaking to you, but I'm not confused. But Arjuna, you're confused. And when you realize who you truly are, you will know that all these warriors that you're fighting, all these Kaurava brothers, need to be killed. And they're not in essence being killed, they're being transmuted, they're being transcended. You're transcending your own lower nature, and all this energy can be found in God. All that we give up in the world, that's truly the message here, because it is so hard for us to give up this. Since I spoke about Karna, I find that for those of us on the spiritual path, he's one of the hardest warriors. Our own desire to find happiness in this world. Yes, we are truly committed to our spiritual path. Yes, we are committed to seeking God, seeking the divine, but we also, deep in our own hearts, hold on to that desire for happiness in this world, which honestly is very, very hard to give up. We want to be comfortable. We don't want to suffer from diseases. We want all our relatives to be happy. We want to find true loving relationships. We want to find financial security, not because we are greedy, but just so we have enough to lead a simple and noble life in this world. But if we are not seeking all of that in God, if we are seeking all that in this world, ultimately it has to be killed. We have to come to this place of understanding that all that we are seeking can be found in God alone, and all these other Kaurava warriors are not us. They are tendencies that we are working with, they are tendencies we are fighting, but ultimately they have to be transmuted. They don't have to be rejected, they don't have to be suppressed, but we have to work with them intelligently, consciously, through the practice of meditation, by pulling our own energies within, and through devotion, by offering it up into the divine. Ultimately, one day, when all these warriors will be destroyed, but not destroyed in the sense that they perish, but destroyed in the sense that they have been lifted up and they've all been offered up to the divine light. So, God bless you all, and I'll speak to you again next week.